Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. With transfer portal season quickly approaching, I figured we would look back and see how some of these immediate transfers played out over kind of really the first big year of the portal, where everyone went crazy and we saw multiple five-star QBs change homes and get that immediate playing time. That's what the transfer portal is. So if you guys don't know, 247 Sports, which is a recruiting site, has what they do is real interesting. They re-rank the players that are in the transfer portal based on how their college career is going. So it's not based off of their recruiting profile. It's like a kid who's a five-star, goes to a school, doesn't play, and then transfers. He's probably going to be thought of a little bit worse than when he was a five-star in high school, right? Because he struggled, or they could get better. It just depends. But we're going to go through their top 10 list, and then also a few other ones I just wanted to look at. And then I'll also say if they're a hit or a miss. That's the other thing. I'll say that. And most of the time it should be fairly obvious. So with number one, the number one overall player, he was a five-star in high school. He was a perfect 1,000 rating as a transfer. It's Caleb Williams. And of course, Caleb Williams is a total hit. He is going to surprisingly win the Heisman. Kind of a weird year for the Heisman. No one really wanted to win it, but Caleb Williams does really, really impressive things, especially against Notre Dame. And, he is carrying this USC team. They do not have a good defense. If they had really anyone else at quarterback other than Caleb Williams, they probably have two, I'm sure they have two losses, but probably three. He is their entire offense, and I would say this is certainly a hit, and he's going to win the Heisman this year. Probably not win it next year because it's impossible to win back-to-back. We saw it with Bryce Young, but either way, he is a beast, and we'll see if he can lead USC to the playoffs. He was definitely a hit. The number two overall player in the portal, Quinn Ewers, who as a high school player was a perfect 1,000, the number one overall player. And as a transfer portal player, he also was a perfect 1,000. He was ranked behind Caleb Williams. Take that for what you want. They do have the same rating, but kind of a weird story with Quinn Ewers. He decides to go to Ohio State a year early. Completely messes up the Ohio State quarterback room in terms of development. Sees that CJ Stroud's in front of him, has some homesickness, things like that, and then immediately transfers after playing 2 snaps with the Buckeyes. He played 2 snaps, 0 pass attempts. He transfers to Texas with Steve Sarkisian. And is it a hit? Is it a miss? Guys, I think it's incomplete at this point with Quinn Ewers. It was a okay year, I guess. With the standards being the number one overall player, I have to think it was a little lackluster, especially compared to Caleb Williams, considering he was ranked higher than Caleb Williams back in high school. It's not a terrible year, although I am left to wonder a little bit, could Hudson Card have maybe been better? He in the limited time he played, it seemed like he played very well. So I don't know, guys. It seems incomplete at this point in terms of hit or miss. I would, hesitate and say hit because Texas was good, and I would say they were a lot better than their record. Probably should have beat Alabama. That was kind of an issue with Ewers being out of the game. If he would have played that game, he got knocked out in the first quarter. They might have won, and it might be a completely different year for Texas. If you look at any metric, they'll tell you Texas is very easily a top 15 team. But unfortunately, they did suffer the very close losses. They had some situations like versus Texas Tech, where Texas Tech converted a bunch of fourth downs. So we'll see what happens with Quinn Ewers next year as a junior in that offense with, I believe, Xavier Worthy still coming back. Moving to the number 3 overall player, it's Jordan Addison. So Jordan Addison became a 5-star after his year with Pittsburgh. When he was a recruit in high school, he was a 4-star recruit, and kind of a weird situation with Pitt. He ends up transferring. I don't know the exact situation around his transfer. I'm sure when you look at someone like Alabama and Nick Saban, he's got to be pretty pissed off at his boosters, because to me this seems like it was a transfer where USC boosters went to him and said, listen, we will give you money to transfer. Now, I'm not saying, there's a conspiracy or anything like that, but the transfer was very odd. It came completely out of nowhere. I understand you want to play with Caleb Williams, but at that point, Caleb Williams was pretty unproven. Maybe he wants to be in the Lincoln Riley offense. I don't know. Either way, I say it's a hit. He had a really nice year. Wasn't crazy in terms of stats, but he was their number one wide receiver, and he is one of the elite receivers in college football, no doubt about it. Jordan Addison, the number 3 overall player. Moving to the number 4 overall player, Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm going to say this one's a miss, transferring from Georgia Tech to Alabama. So in high school, this kid was actually a top 50 player, I believe, and he went to Georgia Tech. I think he was from the state of Georgia, ends up transferring after 1 year. And with Alabama, he had a really good game against Arkansas, but it just feels like pretty much everyone on Bama kind of didn't live up to expectations. I mean, you can say Bryce Young did because he didn't have any weapons and stuff like that, but it just, Will Anderson, I know, he graded out really well with PFF and stuff, but it just feels like their stats are a little bit less. I don't know. So I was expecting Gibbs to kind of make a bigger impact and have a few other huge games. He is still a beast, no doubt about it. He's basically everything you want in a running back. He's compact, he's big, but he's also fast, and he's still elusive. So really elite athlete. It's no surprise he was a 5-star transfer. Alabama needed a kid like him, and they got him, but it just didn't 100% work out. It wasn't a terrible year, but it just felt like there was something missing. Number 5, another 5-star transfer, Eli Ricks to Alabama. I'm going to say this is a miss. Ricks, dealt with some off-the-field issues at Alabama, transferring from LSU. Kind of had an interesting situation. It looked like it was either going to be Ohio State or Alabama. He ends up transferring to Alabama, and he played, but just not a ton of impact. I'm going to say that was a miss in terms of a 5-star impact portal kid. Next, we've got an offensive tackle going from Oregon to BYU, Kingsley Suamataia. I believe that's how it's pronounced. He was a stud as a high school player. I don't remember if he was a 5-star, but I do remember him being a really elite recruit, and he goes to BYU. The only thing I could find on him, he was their starting tackle, and he is a really, really, really good player. So I'm going to say this is a hit, and he's probably going to be a first-round pick. Really big on him, and he's a good player. Number 7 was Jackson Dart. This is another one. This is similar to Quinn Ewers. Good player. I don't know if it's all there. He was a solid 4-star transfer portal kid. Out of high school, he was really highly rated, goes to USC. Caleb Williams comes with Lincoln Riley, and then he says, I'm out, and he goes to Lane Kiffin. So these guys are just getting passed around like used condoms with these quarterbacks, coaches. It seems like everyone's like a quarterback guru now. You got Lane Kiffin, you got Ryan Day, you've got, Lincoln Riley, and he goes from one QB guru to another. And, listen, I'm going to say hit. He was solid. Ole Miss's season ended really badly. And I guess you could say it's a win for Ole Miss in the long run because they keep Lane Kiffin. He doesn't go to Auburn. But their offense wasn't perfect. I think the biggest letdown, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you really should have beaten Alabama. You were in complete control of that game. Not many people remember that game because, to be honest with you, it was a really quiet atmosphere for that Ole Miss-Alabama game. I distinctly remember being like, this is like a top 10 matchup, and it looks like I'm watching a MAC game or something. So either way, I'm going to say it's a hit, but it certainly is not like Dart was a top 5 player, but he did stabilize their program, and you do have to give him credit for that. And also they were ranked pretty much throughout the entire season. I think some of that was due to an easier SEC schedule that they got. And again, they should, if they would have beaten Alabama, this is a completely different story. But it didn't end up happening. They lost by 6. He's number 7. I'll say it's a hit. Number 8 is Zach Evans. So I remember when Zach Evans was the number 1 overall player. Everyone thought he was going to Georgia, ends up going to TCU, transfers away from TCU. Funny enough, TCU, we know they're 12-0 now, and then goes to Ole Miss. And guys, Zach Evans, Pretty good year for him. 900 total yards, averaging 6.5 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns. Unfortunately, he was outshined, completely outshined by their freshman running back. I'm going to say this is a hit. It's just unfortunate for him. They have I believe, either a redshirt freshman or a true freshman that just completely took over and had 1,400 rushing yards or something like that. So I'll say it's a light hit. But it's like he's transferring from TCU and now he's a backup. So that is unfortunate. Either way, that is that. Next, we have Mario Williams, who's another player that followed Lincoln Riley. Mario Williams coming from Oklahoma, part of the Lincoln Riley package, and goes to USC. We can see USC landing 3 of the top 9 players from the portal, including 2 receivers and a quarterback. And Mario Williams, I mean, listen, around 540 yards, 4 touchdowns. Is that enough impact? I mean, as a number 2 or a number 3 receiver in an offense, this is another one that's kind of hard to gauge. I think with Jordan Addison gone next year, that's really his breakout window. So I would say I really wouldn't label this a miss, because he's definitely, USC needed as many elite options as they possibly could get. Lincoln Riley knew that. But he did not really have a breakout season with Jordan Addison as the number 1 wide receiver. I think he's due for a big breakout with Caleb Williams next year after transferring from Oklahoma with Williams and following Lincoln Riley. So he's number 9. Next, we have Jermaine Burton, who transferred to Alabama from Georgia. Really weird situation there. He wins the national title with Georgia over Alabama. And then he says, you know what, I'm just going to transfer to Bama. And now Alabama's completely out of the picture and Georgia is undefeated. For his season, I'm going to say this was a miss. I mean, they needed a number 1 wide receiver, Alabama did, and they could never find it. He finishes with just under 600 yards, 6 touchdowns, averaging almost 16 yards a catch. He showed some big playability for sure. I'm not sure if it was him or another receiver, but one of the Alabama, I think it was him, had a little incident at one of the end of the end of the LSU game. Oh no, the end of the Tennessee game, yes, where one of the Alabama receivers hit someone and then Nick Saban defended it. So I'm going to say this is a miss. They needed a receiver to step up. He was, pretty highly recommended, and they just could never find a number 1 wide receiver. We're also going to look at number 11. Here's one, right? Spencer Rattler. What a career this dude has had, and what an up and down season at South Carolina. Where does Spencer Rattler go from here? Does he try his luck? Coming off a few good games in the NFL draft. Just so streaky. He had a few good early games for South Carolina, then absolutely nothing, and then he finishes by beating Clemson and also annihilating Tennessee, scoring 63 points. And I have to say, this is a hit. They went 8-4. They went 8-4, and they finished inside the top 20. To me, even though it was kind of a really bad middle of the year for Spencer Rattler, I think for sure it is a hit. Next, we're going to be taking a look at these 3 guys. Jalen Billingsley. This would be a message to any head coach. When you see the situation play out where Nick Saban needs pass catchers badly, and this kid is talented, but they still basically kick him out of their program, it's probably best just to avoid him. He ends up transferring to Texas, and I believe he is not with Texas already anymore, so that is a clear miss. Dillon Gabriel. I think Dillon Gabriel had a good year. It just didn't work for Oklahoma. I mean, you would have expected a better year, but his numbers were not bad, and him getting injured mid-season on that concussion against TCU really hurt. And then Hazelwood, who was actually, I believe, the number 3 overall player when he went to Oklahoma, maybe in the 2018 class. He ends up going to Arkansas, and I'm going to say probably a miss. I mean, he just hasn't lived up to it. He wasn't terrible, but not living up to the overall hype of, a top 30 transfer portal kid. Next, we have Jacob Cowing. This is a receiver I really love. Going from UTEP to Arizona, part of that awesome Arizona offense. Really, really good player. Travis Dye, He had a good year with USC before suffering the unfortunate injury. Here's a really good one. Number 32 overall. I believe is either I think he's a guard. Yeah, he is a guard. Osiris Torrance, who was one of the top overall guards in college football according to PFF grades. This is how you build through the portal, and you can see, he was a really good player. He ends up from Louisiana, the university, and goes to Florida. So that was a really good get for them. JT Daniels, just kind of an uninteresting one I threw in. He was ranked 129th. This kid was a former 5-star, top 20 overall player, went to USC, transferred to Georgia, and then transferred again in a double whammy to West Virginia. I mean, he had an okay season. It is what it is. Trey Palmer, I would say that's a major hit. Trey Palmer had a very good year, transferring from LSU to Nebraska. Nebraska themselves did not have a good year, but Trey Palmer's a really good receiver. Ivan Pace Jr., definite hit here, transferring from Maryland to Cincinnati, one of the best linebackers, if not the best linebacker in college football. I think this is just really disrespectful to Bo Nix. Guys, I don't remember Bo Nix being this bad. I could understand if he's outside the top 75, 184. I know there's a lot of kids that transfer, but holy crap. Certainly, I mean, that was a miss by them in terms of ranking him there, but in terms of going to Oregon, big hit. Really, really nice year for Bo Nix and him. And guys, that is going to do it for kind of my transfer portal review of last year. We're going to have they're saying a bigger year in terms of the transfer portal this year. And we saw USC completely turn around their program in one season through the transfer portal. We'll see if another head coach can do what Lincoln Riley did last year. I think the transfer portal is really going to be treated similarly to how Nick Saban, operates, where we have specific needs. We're going to fill those needs with the best available players in the portal. That's what I think is going to happen in terms of a lot of the top universities looking for specific things when it comes to that. And then I don't know if we'll see another huge rebuild. I think USC added 17 players, was it, in the portal? So it was just crazy. Ole Miss also had a ton of players. And guys, those two schools, they performed well. I mean, Ole Miss was ranked every week. USC, the total turnaround. So it's definitely here to stay the transfer portal. It's a huge asset. I think there's been, reports that Dabo Swinney, Clemson don't like using it. That's a major disadvantage, So I think they really have to rethink that, especially if I'm Dabo. You don't want to take every kid, but certainly. And then just another quick thing I tweeted out. A lot of these kids, especially with Texas A&M, they're the true freshman 5-stars like Walter Nolan. These kids are entering the transfer portal, getting more money from the Texas A&M boosters to take their names out of the transfer portal. So when they get recruited, they commit to Texas A&M because of money. Then after their first season, they enter the portal because Texas A&M sucks, and those same boosters that paid to get them committed have to give them more money to keep them on the roster and not leave for another school. It's crazy. NIL stuff is crazy, guys. The transfer portal is crazy. But that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.